Hello and good morning. Thank you for joining us on this very last lap of Nigeria Decide 2023. A new president has been elected. The 16th president of Nigeria has been elected indeed. A few minutes ago, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakub, announced the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as the president-elect of the country. The Independent National Electoral Commissioner declared Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC as the winner of Saturday's presidential election. Senator Tinubu defeated 17 other candidates who took part in the election. He scored a total of 8,794,726 votes, the highest of all the candidates, thus meeting the first constitutional requirement to be declared the winner. He also scored over 25% of the votes cast in 30 states, more than the 24 states constitutionally required. INEC chairman Mahmood Yakubu, who announced the final result in the early hours of today, said Atiku Abubakar of the PDP came second in the election. Atiku polled a total of 6,984,520 votes in the election. Peter Obi of the Labour Party came third in the election with a total of 6,101,533 votes, while Rabiu Kwankwaso of the NNPP came fourth with 1,496,687 votes.
Present the summary of results from the states of the Federation as collated from the submissions made by the state collation officers for the presidential election. Total registered voters for the entire nation is 93,469,008. Party is as follows. A, Accord Party, 61,014. Action Alliance, AA, 14,542. African Action Congress, AAC, 14,608. ADC, Action Democratic Congress, 81,919. The Action Democratic Party, ADP, 43,924. The All Progressives Congress, APC, 8,794,726. The All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA, 61,966. Allied People's Movement, APM, 25,961. Action People's Party, APP, 12,839. Boot Party, BP, 16,156. The Labour Party, LP, 6,101,533. The New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP 1,496,687. National Rescue Movement NRM 24,869. People's Democratic Party 6,984,520. People's Redemption Party PRP 72,144. Social Democratic Party SDP 80,267. Young Progressive Party YPP 60,600. Zenith Labour Party ZLP 77,665. Total valid votes 24,025,940. Rejected votes 939,278. Total votes cast 24,965,218. We have the spreadsheet to be signed by agents of political parties. So, may I invite the agents of political parties to please come forward and sign the EC 8DA. So, Accord Party, the agent of Accord Party, Party A, next is AA, Action Alliance. ADC, ADP, APC, APGA, APGA, APM, Allied People's Movement, APP, Boot Party, BP, LP, the Labour Party, NNPP, New Nigeria People's Party, NRM, National Rescue Movement, PDP, People's Redemption Party, PDP, People's Democratic Party. Then PRP, People's Redemption Party. SDP, Social Democratic Party. YPP, Young Progressive Party. And the Zenith Labour Party, the ZLP. Okay, thank you very much. Please resume your seat. I now perform my responsibility as the returning officer for the presidential election. I, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, hereby certify that I am the returning officer for the 2023 presidential election held on the 25th of February 2023. The election was contested. The candidates received the following votes. Imumolen Irene Christopher of A Party, 61,014. Al-Mustafa Hamza of the AA Party, 14,542. Shawore Omoyele Stephen of the AAC, 14,608 votes. Sani Yabagi Yusuf of the ADP, 43,924. Kachuku Dumebi of the ADC, 81,919. Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, 8,794,726. Umiadi Peter Nana Chukudi of ABGA, 61,966. Oje Princess Chichi of the APM, 25,961. Nadi Charles Osita of APP, 12,839. Adenuga Sunday Oluwafemi of the Boot Party BP, 16,156. Obi Peter Gregory of the LP, 6,101,533. Musa Mohammed Rabiu Kwankwaso of the NNPP, 1,496,687. Osakwe Felix Johnson of the NRM, 24,869. Abubakar Atiku of the PDP, 6,984,520. Abiola Latifu Kolaole of the PRP, 72,144. Adebayo Adeole Ebenezer of the Social Democratic Party, 80,267. Ado Ibrahim Abdul Malik of the YPP, 60,600. Iwanyao Daniel Daberechuku of the ZLP, 77,665. That Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected. Thank you.
All right, you heard him there, the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, announcing the president-elect. That is bringing to an end an exercise that started about 5 days ago, Saturday, February the 25th, 2023. So I'm not alone in the studio. I have someone here to give some perspective to all the activities that have been going on in the past 5 days. A public affairs analyst, Mr. Mukhtar Suleiman. Mukhtar, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
The last time I saw it was before the elections.
Yes, I know. And
Yes.
it has been a very... I just want to correct something there. The exercise did not start on the 25th of February. It started long before
It's been
that.
a long
So it has
exercise.
been a very long
I'm just talking about
exercise.
the actual voting,
the actual voting
to the collation of the results.
It's been really interesting. I've been up since 3 a.m. I've been following up the collection this morning.
Okay.
Wanted to see it to the end. And it's... I know that there's going to be a lot of difference of opinion and a lot of mixed feelings about the results. It's normal with every election.
Yes, I know, but
anyway.
I would like you to give a general overview of the entire exercise.
Well, it's quite tricky to actually say, to actually put numbers or simple perspective to the whole exercise. But this is what I'm going to say. There were so many faults and discrepancies in the way INEC handled the elections, which have opened the results to a lot of interpretations. One of it specifically, which has actually been an outcry by everybody who have been speaking up about it since, was the not transmitting the results of the BVAS from the polling units. This was an agreement that the INEC chairman, when there was a rumor last year in November, if I remember, that the INEC chairman was going to actually not transmit the results. He came out, he gave a whole press conference about it and addressed it and said that was a lie. But then here we are. The results were not transmitted the way we expected, which is a big problem with the process in its entirety. But on the flip side, the results that were called out, according to the commission, were sheets that were signed by the party agents, all of the party agents. So that's also another side of it.
Which was why there were different schools of thought on this issue. Because some persons said, well, since the agents were at the polling unit, maybe this particular issue shouldn't have been such a huge deal after all.
No, it is a huge deal. Why? For me, I think anyway, I would think it's a huge deal because precedence matters. If this precedence about transmitting results is maintained, then no other INEC chairman can ever go below it. Because now we have to hope that the next INEC chairman, if it's not Professor Mahmood, has to ensure that this precedence is set, because it allows for trust in the process. If we cannot trust the process, it's difficult for people to trust the outcome of the results. The election in itself, and as I've always said, is not really a good election. It had a lot of issues, way too many issues, but we're growing. But if you compare it, if you do it in comparison to previous elections, arguably this is one of the best we've had. Because we now have seen that rhetoric and that myth about the KKK state, we saw that they had to, election results had to edge towards accreditation and not toward registered voters. So we saw 26% turnout roughly by the results that the INEC chairman called, which is one of the poorest outcomes by data and statistics.
The turnout is 24,966,218, the lowest since 1999.
Yes,
and you know, before the elections, because of the campaigns and advocacies and all that, a lot of people thought
there was massive
the turnout would be a lot better.
I monitored the election.
Okay.
I went round, and we had boots on the ground across all of the 774 local governments from our situation room, and I can guarantee you that there was a large turnout. That's why I said.
So if there was a large turnout, what happened?
That's why I said at this point, it now opens up what has the data been like before now, because now we have a methodological and technological proof to the amount of, because if you thumbprint, you are 1. If you thumbprint, you're 2. If you thumbprint, you're 3. Now, of course, there are statistics as to people that were disenfranchised because of the issues of voter suppression that we saw, the issue of the BVAS for some people. A whole polling unit in Sokoto, if I'm not mistaken, was cancelled because the electorate there refused to use the BVAS, which was a problem. But then if you remove, these are pockets of issues that are actually recurrent in our electioneering process. There's always the issue of violence and how that disenfranchises some people. There are some people, there's also the issue of voter apathy, which also happens. But then, like I said, it now comes out to open interrogation as to what has our previous elections been like in the past. This is really interesting. I had a paper that is being reviewed about the influence of voter apathy on the democracy of Nigeria, a research paper. I'm looking to withdraw it now and add the data from this and also elaborate. Elaborate that discussion more.
You know, before this announcement, not a lot. People were not very sure about the way it was going to go because of the complaints about the inability of INEC to upload the results, and then the complaints of some persons saying they did not vote. In your view, those two issues, the pockets of, you know, the problems in some areas and the inability, were they enough to dent this process?
Again, like I said, if the process is not fully trusted, it's difficult to actually trust the outcome. What was going to ensure transparency, and one of the primary reasons why the BVAS was introduced, was to address this issue of these questions and all of these things when they begin to come up. But for it not to have happened, and there's no clear-cut, logical explanation, and then that's a problem. I'm not going to actually try and preempt the courts with any of my own personal perspective, but I look forward to the litigation that's going to happen, because I was telling a friend of mine this morning after the result came out that the elections is just part one of a drama that I'm looking forward to. The litigations, the arguments that will be put forward by the candidates and all of their lawyers is something I'm actually looking forward to, and I hope that that's going to be a very interesting thing for our democracy as well. Because one of the other things that you might actually have to also notice is what Section 134(2) says about winning the elections, where it says you have to win 25% of 24 states and the FCT. So now the question of what and the FCT means is left for the Supreme Court.
Well, I saw a lot of arguments on that yesterday on social media and all of that. But you know, each time we talk about 36 states of the country, we always say 36 states of the country and the FCT. So the FCT has always come with that and. So if they are saying you should win 24 states, 25% in 24 states, and the FCT, it's just that that's how it has always been referred to. And also, Femi Falana said that the Supreme Court, in a particular ruling, recognized the FCT as a state, not with any extra status.
No, it doesn't.
So if the argument is that you must win the FCT, that will mean that the FCT has an extra status that other states do not have.
I agree with you, but lawyers will tell you that the law is not ambiguous and it is precise. If there is a list that is covered in a law, in a constitution or an act or a policy, then anything outside of that list is ambiguity that should be open to the court for interpretation. So for the singular reason that the Constitution actually says 24 the constitution would have just easily said
25.
25 states in the federation, including the FCT, or not even including
Maybe
the FCT.
when he said "and,"
This is where the intent of the law, maybe this is where the intent of the law comes in.
I guess we'll have to wait for interpretation.
Yeah, and aside from 134.2, 134.2a goes further to explain what happens if, where rerun comes in, what happens if a candidate does not.
Does not get that.
Maybe one of those 134, one of those subsections should have actually addressed that. If a candidate does not win the FCT, I don't know, that you get where I'm trying, because
Yes,
the law is
I
a
do.
precise concept.
I do, totally.
The law
And
should be a precise
I agree
concept.
with you. And
Yeah.
I think that the fact that that issue even came up for argument at all at this point means that there is a need for a clear-cut
Yes, and that's why I said,
interpretation on that issue.
The Supreme Court has to find a way to actually let us know what that means, what that interpretation is, because that 25% is actually a very key thing. So are we re-amending the law? That part of it, are we adding a subsection into the Constitution to cover for this? Because we know that a typical example would be, we have this kind of extenuating circumstances sometimes in Nigeria. A typical example was after the death of Audu, God bless his soul,
Yeah.
in 2015, where there was no law in
There
the
was no
country
law to address that particular situation at that time. Yes.
So that we're in the precipice of that kind of situation again. So we're hoping that this can be actually be addressed, and then we can see what happens as time goes on.
Okay, still before the announcement of the results, we had party agents walking out of the collation center.
Yeah.
We saw pockets of protests yesterday. And one thing the INEC chairman kept on saying was that allow the process to conclude and then seek redress in court if you have concerns. And so my question is, knowing why do you think instead of waiting for the process to end, some people decided to start protesting at the collation center and even on the streets?
I do not take away people's right to protest. I wouldn't, because right to protest is actually one of the few things about every democracy in the world across the globe. However, I would argue that we should ensure that our grievances are channeled through legal means. I was saying this to a few people yesterday who cared to listen, and I said, however unfair or untrusted you feel like the system is, one of the cons of democracy is that you have to trust and negotiate with that system. We said we want a democracy. This is what democracy is. You have to understand how the law works. After the process must conclude and cannot stop at that point. After the process and after the declaration, there's a 7-day window for INEC to review its books properly and say it stands by the results it broadcasted. If that's what INEC says, then a post-election tribunal will be set up if parties want to go to contest the results. The post-election tribunal will sit on the case, review the facts, give a ruling. If any other party is still dissatisfied with the ruling of the post-election tribunal, they go to the High Court. When they go to the High Court sits down, look at the rulings of the post-election tribunal, look at the fact again, review, give its ruling. If anybody is still dissatisfied, they go to the appellate court. When they go to the Court of Appeal, they argue with the appellate court, gives a ruling, and then you go to the Supreme Court.
All right, that's a good place to take a pause for
actually
now. We'll take a short break. When we return, the show continues. Please stay.
Plus TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us in the last segment of Nigeria Decides 2023. I also have joining us in the studio now our in-house analyst, Mr. Kende Amodu. Kende, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And today is a historic day, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. It is a long process, not too long, but I guess it's a process that has produced a lot of drama on the way. What I see coming out is a three-horse race, which is something we haven't really experienced. Three running neck to neck. I think democracy is coming of age.
All right. Before we went on break, Mukhtar was talking about. I was talking with Mukhtar about the process before the announcement of the result. The fact that some party agents had to storm out, and the fact that we saw pockets of protest. And I was wondering, was that necessary, considering that there are channels of seeking redress if you have a problem?
I think I said in the course of analysis yesterday that these protests. The politicians had seen what was coming ahead. It was like they'd seen the handwriting of the wall. Sometimes it's just to distract the process, to try and slow down the process or discontinue the process, which is what they were asking for. Let's postpone. And then the INEC chairman said, no, let's complete this process. When we have completed this process, then we can review. And there's actually a window for review. So the whole idea of stopping the process before the review would come on was like disrupting the process altogether. And I'm glad he stood his ground, because he knew he was standing by according to the law, according to the powers that have been given to him by the Electoral Act. And that is why he stood his ground. And it's a good thing to see, okay, that right now we have taken another step in the stage. We are now at maybe the second to the last stage. Now we can do that review. Now we can see what will come after this. And there's still a lot of processes to seek redress if the review does not turn out in the favor of those that are agitating. Yeah,
and Mukhtar, what we saw, he talked about the three-horse race. We saw a situation where the people who felt aggrieved now came together to issue press conferences and all of that. And some experts or some persons were saying that if these three persons who were aggrieved at this point that are coming together to give this press conference, if they had come together and formed an alliance before the election, the story would have been different.
I agree, because you need to understand that the power of incumbency is a very difficult thing to actually beat. For the APC to knock off the PDP in 2015, ANPP, CPC, and the AC had to come together as one party to actually, and these people already had sitting governors, sitting senators. They had their own presidential candidates who had to step down for one candidate to actually go and field himself and actually knock off who that thing they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, which is something that they should have actually mustered up since September when this whole thing started. Well, at the end of the day, politics will politic. That's actually the way it works. And however we want to say it is, the one thing that happened was we had an unprecedented election circle, which has really not happened. If you look at the map of how these candidates won elections, you saw that the LP won 12 states, plus 11 states plus the FCT. Bola Ahmed Tinubu won 12 states. Atiku won 12 states. Which means that it was actually a drag race to some extent. So it's just that the number of the popular vote that went to Bola Ahmed Tinubu was more. And then he ensured that he stuck to his 25% across the 30 states in the country. But you still cannot take away the fact that this election is a good thing. It's unprecedented. It has never happened like this in the country. And we're happy about it. Well, some people anyway are happy about it. And because it's a step in the right direction, actually, because, yeah, it's slow. It's a painful process. But change does not just happen overnight. That's not how it works. Democracy in our country has dragged its feet for so long. And now we've improved this system that ensures some level of transparency. That's why I was mentioning to you earlier. I was looking forward to seeing those numbers of the KKK states come out the way they usually come out, but they didn't. Because now the numbers have to edge towards the accredited voters and not toward the amount of people who register to vote, which is a very good thing for elections. Because you and I, everybody saw that there was massive turnout for this election, and yet we got less than 25% turnout, according to the results that were released. So now we have to open all of the previous elections into a lot of scrutiny. What were the issues?
When you talked about there was massive turnout, and yet we had this percent.
Yes.
Well, some persons have said that they were not allowed to vote. Based on your monitoring of the exercise,
Yes.
was that what happened?
I wouldn't say that's what happened in its entirety. Yes, there was voter suppression from some persons, hoodlums, attack, but like not to undermine the experiences of anybody who was a victim of this, but it's something that happens in every election cycle. In fact, dare I say, the violence of these elections is not as much as it has been. Mm-hmm. Before now, we know the way violence was, electoral violence has been. The violence of this election is not as much. So if you have to be very naive and not to be following the election processes since 1999 for you to actually think that this was really that bad an election. I've always said this, in itself, the election in itself is a bad election. But if you compare it to previous elections, this is one of the best we've had.
Do you share those views? Do you believe that, because I mean, if you put that side by side, the complaints that happened during the collation of the results?
Yeah, some of the complaints that I saw actually begged the question. I think that a lot of the political parties went into this election with certain calculations. And as we see, the states that they calculated would be their strongholds turned out not to be. If you look at how the spread turned out, you see that Labour Party actually trumped APC and PDP in some of its strongholds, in some of the places where everybody would say, oh, let's forget about it. These places belong to either APC or PDP. Crept in. And then if you look at you look at states that PDP won from APC and APC won from PDP, you see that the initial calculations that the political parties went into these elections with did not actually pan out. So that is why you would see that the protests will come up. I actually continue to say that what they are protesting is not the credibility of the process itself, but the efficiency of the election itself. The efficiency as per BVAS machines, efficiency as
commencement
per
of the process.
Commencement of the process, efficiency about logistics, efficiency about how well trained the ad hoc staff were in operating the BVAS machines.
Honestly, because we got to see in some polling units that I'm going to say two things that really happened in this election that were really displeasing to me. One of it was we got to see in some polling units that some of the ad hoc staff had never powered on the BVAS themselves. So that means they were not trained, they were not familiar with it. Some of the voters had to be the ones to say press here. Yeah, they were doing trial and error in the field. That was one thing.
And why do you think that happened? Because INEC had a lot of time to plan for this.
Yes, and it's the unpreparedness. I think it still speaks to our negligence about things that are very, very important as a country, which I hope will be the one thing that will change again by the next election cycle.
Well, you know, in this particular election cycle, there were more polling units. Over 50,000 polling units were added. Do you think that contributed to the problem?
It's not about the number of polling units now, really. I think that's what Kendi was saying. Sorry, it's about the efficiency, not about the deployment of what you did. It's one thing to deploy a resource. It's another thing for that resource to be efficient, to serve the purpose you are deploying it for. So there were about 176,000 polling units, if I'm not mistaken, 606. polling units that were operational for this, but the ad hoc staff themselves that worked, how good were they with that process? Were they efficient enough to serve the purpose? Because we saw some videos, in fact, when I saw the videos, I went online to check myself, we saw some uploads, it was somebody's face.
But we saw a lot of
some
stories
uploads.
on training of ad hoc staff. So what could have happened?
Well, you should also look at, so INEC should interrogate its recruitment process of the ad hoc staff. Because you know the Nigerian factor normally enters here. Okay, you have this, because basically I think even the ad hoc staff should have basic knowledge of IT and all that. If you do have that, even if you do trial and error, you will fall on your feet. But if that is not there, then there is nothing to build on. And I think maybe what's happened in the recruitment process is this is my brother. Send your
Nepotism.
send your CV, let us recruit you and everything. And that is what played out here. So that's why I say the efficiency of the system is something that must be interrogated, not the integrity. Yes, the politicians did funny things, but that efficiency of the system is what, like, okay, now that INEC had promised that there will be electronic transmission of results, and then it didn't happen. You know, that is also part of the efficiency of the process. Because this is what INEC had promised. Not that it was bound, because there is also an escape route for INEC in the Electoral Act that says it's manual and electronic. But, you know, that is what the parties harped on. That, oh, you promised us electronic transmission of results and we're not seeing it. So it's the efficiency of the system itself. You understand? But, you know, politicians tend to go overboard, and then the next thing is that they're even questioning the credibility or the integrity of the INEC chairman. But this is all because I believe they had seen the picture ahead. They had done their projections. The state coalition in the states had shown a clear picture of where this was going.
Yeah, because when you talked about questioning the credibility of the chairman, I went back to the video that happened in 2015 when a former minister, Goswell Orubebe, came on the stage. He also questioned the integrity of the chairman at that time, and it was a different chairman.
Yes.
I think it's a regular thing if you're at the expense of sounding very off here, but if you're losing, you want to also throw your last swing to see what happens and what sticks. But I can guarantee you that even Senator Dino Melaye knew that process was not going to end there, despite his blowout. But of course, he needed to do something to show their own grievance, which is democratic right anyway. They can express themselves. But then again, there are actually ways to get your redress beyond questioning the efficiency of the systems that were deployed. And that thing I think we need to look at is the accountability of INEC as well. INEC got an estimated 345 billion, which is 45 billion annual budget, and an additional 305 billion cash backing from the National Assembly to run these elections. Where did those money go? How were they spent? What did they use them for? Because if we are having this kind of silly mistakes, like ink dried up during voting, this kind of silly mistakes, then there's a problem with the logistics planning.
I think that there should be something like an audit of.
Yes, there should be an audit, not just in the finances. There should be audits in also the logistics. There should be a complete overhaul of audits of the entire commission, because we don't want to keep repeating these kind of mistakes. There are some. I know of a polling unit in Kuje, where, because we had boots on the ground there, where the NYSC ad hoc staff that came, they said they had to pull money together to get a bus to come there by themselves. And this happened in multiple polling units where INEC did not show up because the staff said they were not mobilized.
There were also some videos where, because election went into the night, the place was dark, and then we saw people donating generator and all of that.
So all of these things needs to be checked, because you could even see how really not so good it looks when one of the party agents had to tell the INEC chairman, we've been here since yesterday, you didn't even give us water. For those people inside of the ICC. So these are small things, because you're not letting the party people come to the ICC because of security reasons. The bare minimum you could do is ensure that they are served. Because are you asking them to stay there for the entire process hungry? That's another question.
All right.
So these things need to actually be checked by.
All right, Kehinde, you both of you have mentioned some of the issues that were observed and the need for some of INEC to do a couple of things. Now we have another election in 2 weeks. Do you think that there's anything
in 2 weeks?
Just a little over a week. Do you think there's anything INEC can do between now and that time to see that the state's election is a bit different?
Yes, I think INEC should go back. I think probably, and I'm not making any excuses for INEC, the time span within which even their funds were released to them would also affect their preparedness.
Oh, they have their funds. According to the Electoral Act, they are supposed to release their funds for them long before. They have their funds already.
But they were telling us that they will get their funds. This was also...
They actually got it the Tuesday before the election.
Before the election.
But the Saturday.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think...
That's the cash.
That,
you know,
yes.
You know.
Yes, so I think that also...
No, sorry for cutting you, but I think that was an issue of the cash crunch.
Yeah.
Yes.
And an agreement between them and CB, not because they didn't have the money within their own custody. See, sorry for cutting you again. Procurement process should be followed and adhered to religiously. If you're going to work within the space of the INEC office, make sure that you can do these transfers really fast. All you just need to do is liaise with the bank. You don't need cash backing. Yes, because as a commission, these things should follow regular procurement procedures. Because if you're using cash, how then do we account for it properly? So I think that's something that they actually need to look at.
So obviously, they need to look at the way they spend and the way they
Structure the
logistics going forward. They have little over a week to get their acts right, because it would be unfortunate if we have the governorship and the State House of Assembly elections and the same complaints follow those elections.
Okay.
Yeah, because we really need to look at that, because the governorship election is where you say politics is local. Because there it goes closer to home. There are about 28 states, if I'm not mistaken, that are going to be running.
States,
They are going to be running for the 11th of March, and
but the state assembly is all over the
if I may say this, the sanity of this country rests in the efficiency of that March 11th elections. Because governors, aspiring governors, are seeing the twists and turns that have happened with the Senate and the presidential elections, and now they are thinking of how to up their game.
Yes, I was going to ask that. How do you see the outcome of the presidential election impacting the state election?
Significantly.
The governors will have to go back and regroup. For instance,
they have just over a week to regroup.
Yeah,
you put it.
Yeah, they have to. They have to go re-strategize and see. And the first set of elections will make the second set more desperate.
Exactly. That's exactly. I was trying not to use that word, so not to point accusing fingers. But yeah, that's exactly the point.
Okay, and now let's talk about the voting pattern. When you look at the spread of the votes, a lot of analysts have said that it is largely along religious and ethnic lines. Kehinde?
I wouldn't want to say that.
Okay.
I want to say that we had new players come up, and that shook up the political equation. The campaigns were along, also they threw the laws out of the window. The campaigns were virulent, they were along ethnic, religious lines, but when it came to casting their votes, Nigerians cast their votes based on their convictions. Whether it be the young believing that a young president should come, whether it be those that believe that the old order should stand, whether it be that people that had been assured that in the new dispensation there will be a better deal for them. I don't think those elections were cast along religious and ethnic lines. I think we are starting to see a kind of, I don't want to say maturity, political vision with the people that understand that it's the leader they put in place, that they are responsible for that. And I think that consciousness has come. And yes, it may not have changed radically everything, but it's a gradual process that has started and is being seen. So I don't think it was the ethnic or religious factor this time around. I think it was people, there are several other factors. For instance, the EndSARS movement played a critical role in the way Nigerians voted this time around. For instance, people looked at establishment figures and said, we are not putting establishment figures in. You see governors losing their bid to go to the Senate. That's because a narrative has been sold that these governors look at the Senate and see it as a retirement home. And a lot of them lost out in the process. So I think Nigerians are starting to think that, if you don't make things easy for us, we won't reward your inefficiency, and that is what is coming out to play.
I think
Talking about
I think
a lot of people losing out.
if I may also add to what he said is when you look at building up to the elections, you get to see that there was a candidate for everybody. If you wanted to vote ethnic line, there was a candidate for you. If you wanted to toe the line of religion, there was a candidate for you. So and if you follow the narrative of these people and how they campaigned, there was a candidate for almost everybody, and people picked based on whatever it is their personal sentiments are, devoid of the regular mundane sentiments. The narrative redesign had an impact on how people voted. The EndSARS movement that he has mentioned also had an impact on how people voted. Voting pattern actually, not largely, not so much, but it improved. People were now focused on content of persons, because you get to see the kind of movement that happened leading up to the election, where people were trying to say, this candidate is this. There were deeper analysis into each person, their person, than there was into whether it was party, whether they were Muslim, whether they were, yes, there was a Muslim ticket argument, there was a Muslim-Christian thing, but it had no much weight as to how because people were dissecting manifestos, people were dissecting the content of each candidate's speech, which played a very vital role in how people voted this time.
All right, thank you so much, Mukhtar Suleiman. Thank you for spending this time of your morning with us. We really appreciate it. And you have given a lot of insight into the general elections. Sadly, we'll have to let you go, and be sure that we'll call upon you some other time. So with that, we'll go for a very short break now. When we come back, the show continues. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and you're still tuned to Nigeria Decides on Trust Television, reaching you live from the nation's capital. If you're just joining us, we're already 1 hour into the show. We're going to continue now with the discussions, and I have another analyst joining Kehinde Amadu in the studio. He is a security and political analyst, and his name is Mahmood Dantata. Mr. Mahmood, you're welcome to the show.
Very good morning to you, my co-guest and the versatile anchor person. I'm glad you are a woman.
I'm glad to have you on the show. But before we start the discussion, let's take reactions to the announcement of the results.
Our development partners, the represented 119. Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, 8,794,726. Umiadi Peter Nana Chukudi of Abga, 61,966. Oje Princess Chichi of the APM, 25,961. Nadi Charles Osita of APP, 12,839. Adenuga Sunday Oluwafemi of the Boot Party BP, 16,156. Obi Peter Gregory of the LP, 6,101,533. Musa Mohammed Rabiu Kwankwaso of the NNPP, 1,496,687. Osakwe Felix Johnson of the NRM, 24,869. Abubakar Atiku of the PDP, 6,984,520. Abiola Latifu Kolaole of the PRP, 72,144. Adebayo Adeole Ebenezer of the Social Democratic Party, 80,267. Ado Ibrahim Abdul Malik of the YPP, 60,600. Iwanyao Daniel Dabere Chuku of the ZLP, 77,665. That Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected. Thank you. Is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
All right, welcome back. We'll now take the acceptance speech of the president-elect. Take a look.
I have been elected the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is a serious mandate. I hereby accept it. That mandate to serve you, be your servant, and not be your leader. To work with you and make Nigeria a great country. I take this opportunity also again to appeal to my fellow contestants to let us team up together. It is the only nation we have. It is one country that we must build together. We work together to put broken pieces together. We must work for the unity, happiness, and harmony. We must not act like that orchestra that has no direction of a conductor. We and we have elected a conductor named President-elect. Let's collaborate to create a symphony that will make the rhythm of music and prosperity and history for our country. We have what it takes. We have what is needed. Knowledge, creativity, the mind, determination, we are the same country performing wonders in other countries. We can do it here.
That is the president-elect giving us his acceptance speech. Now, Mr. Dantata, the president-elect said he's going to be a servant, not a leader. And he called on all those he contested with to come together and work with him. Do you think that that call is enough for all those questioning the integrity of the election, questioning, the results, to sheath their swords and, move forward?
Even two countries that goes to war to fight themselves, at the time they agree that there is no victor nor vanquish, they come to round table and take tea together, talk more of individuals that vied to lead a people. Most of the contenders were either former governors, one among them was even two-term vice president. For you to be an elder statesman in any part of the world, there are prices you must pay. His speech calls for sober reflection. His speech gives a clear sign of extension of olive branch to the aggrieved. And this has been our expectation. Were it not to be like this, we will have, analyzed it to be the other way. But I'm so impressed with his positivity, and you can see he's saying it with all sense of humor and sincerity. So I think at this time, what we need, there was a peace accord headed by former head of state, and for one of the candidates of the PDP, that is former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who was a PDP candidate, as well as counterpart in Labour Party, Peter Obi, as well as Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, Hamza Al-Mustafa, and other contenders from other parties. I think this time around, what they need to demonstrate to Nigerians is to sit down amongst themselves so that they can read in between the line the course the president-elect is doing. Notwithstanding, at this time, National Traditional Rulers Council of Nigeria, which has a Sunupe and chairman of Niger State Council of Traditional Rulers is coordinator, as well as Oni of Ife, chairman of Osun State Council of Obas as chairman, Sultan of Sokoto as chairman, as well as Oni of Ife as co-chairman, need to come in now and show their traditional and royal powers, because even though they say they don't have roles to play in the constitution, I believe we still respect our traditional rulers. So this is a time they need to come together, call Atiku, Kwankwaso, Peter Obi, and the president-elect himself, for them to sit down so that a government of national reconciliation and unity can be built, because the country is tensed right now and we are not praying for disintegration. Of course, Nigeria will not love to become another Yugoslavia, Somalia, Syria, or Libya. Like one Yoruba musician used to say, Mr. Fuji Sikiru and Barrister, that is for you to see the extent at which music has brought about unity in this country. That if you haven't seen the war in Liberia and Yugoslavia, is when you will be beating the drum of war. No country in Africa will be able to, if, God forbid, war breaks out in Nigeria, will be able to condone the numbers of refugees. We don't pray for that anyway.
All right, Kende, we haven't heard of any calls from the runner-up, Atiku Abubakar, or even from the person who came third, Mr. Peter Obi. To what extent do you think their actions at this point will form, whatever comes up going forward?
The process of reconciliation is a gradual one. I think with the announcement of the results now, that's the first step. The uncertainty of whether who is leading and who has won has been taken out of the way. I think that reality will also have dawned on all the contestants now, that well, this contest has been run and it has produced a winner. From here, I think gradually, each and every one of the contestants will acknowledge and call the president-elect.
Well,
it's not going to be an immediate process.
Well, the thing is this: how quickly they do that it determines what their supporters will do.
Yeah, but you see, they've already made a case for the credibility or otherwise of the elections, and they will play that script through. Now, it depends on how stakeholders will woo them back to the fold.
And there's also an existing peace pact.
There's a peace pact, yes.
They were all supposed to adhere to.
That they're supposed to adhere to. So, right now, what will now happen is stakeholders will reach out to them and try to reconcile them and say, well, take the path of honor and accept or congratulate the president-elect. Not everybody will congratulate the president-elect immediately, because everybody will still be grandstanding now. But it's a process that will eventually happen.
All right. A part of his speech, which wasn't part of what was aired, was the fact that he was speaking to the youth. He told them, I hear you loud and clear, and he says he understands their pains and that he was going to do something about that. One of the things that the youth this time came out and spoke loudly, and it wasn't for his candidature. So do you think this statement by the president-elect is going to be able to assuage the youths and make them to key into his presidency?
Well, it has to go beyond words. And I believe he has the capacity to deliver on his words. But it has to go beyond words. Once the youth starts to see that in action, things are starting to turn around, I'm very sure that in the next election, if he runs, he will be given the maximum support. But right now is the starting, we are now at the starting tax. How he goes from here will determine how quickly, not only the youth, but all Nigerians will come around and support his presidency.
And you know, he also said that he was going to, that he has seen all the difficult problems that and is ready to take very difficult decisions. Mr. Dantata, I would like you to speak to that.
Well, if you look at the kind of promises he's making, this is someone as Chief Executive Officer of Lagos State, one of the largest states in Africa, not only Nigeria, was able to liberate hitherto redundant and idle area boys to becoming useful, created agencies that today have become employer of labor in Lagos State. The Itato Bar Beach, me and you know, close to NT Ahmadu Bello Way, has been sandfilled to tours, provision of infrastructure there, and what have you. For anybody that knew how Lagos was before Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu took over from Colonel Marwa under General Abdulsalam Abubakar, you will know that he came and enhanced internally generated revenue, human capacity development. Like we always say, most of the achievements we are shouting on Jakande, as Second Republic Governor of Lagos State, were more of free education and human capacity development. Because till Jakande left as governor, he said, I cannot do anything other than education and human capacity development. So which goes to tell you that if Ahmed Bola Tinubu as president-elect is now sworn in and inaugurated, and he chooses human capacity building and employment creation, those point agendas alone can endear them to the heart of the youths. Because like my learned colleague in the studio here said, most of the youths did not support APC, to be emphatic and practical. Most of the youths, irrespective of religion and tribe, supported the Labour Party's candidate. That is clear, and many people know that you see on internet for the first time, even people in Kano, Sokoto, that I was even surprised. In fact, at a point, I was angry with one of my friends. I said, this obedient you are talking, what have you? Irrespective of that, you can see that is somebody who wants to bring back the lost unity among us. Because when you are talking about a country moving from a country to a nation, we have to tolerate ourselves, whether Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, Boko, Baruba, Tono, Fulani, Kakanda, Nupe, and also irrespective of any religious grouping.
All right, Kende, he also he said political competition must not give way to political conciliation and inclusive governance. Now, before now, a lot of people have talked about a divide in the country along whatever lines. How much do you think he's going to be able to bring back, unify the country?
Well, let's go back to 1999 when President Olusegun Obasanjo came on board. What he did to bring all sides back together in one fold is to create a government of national unity, in which, in his cabinet, he picked members of all political parties and made them ministers. And, you know, that in a way kind of stabilized the country in those first few years. And the kind, you know, people, the stake people had in the government was not just from one party, it was from across board. Now, if he's able to do that as part of his strategy, I don't know what he means, what he's going to do, what will be his strategies as political conciliation. But if he's able to do that and bring all parties into the center, into under his own government and under his own leadership, I believe that a lot of these political contests will just naturally die down. But the important thing, the important thing is that he must be seen as having a direction that will tackle many of the economic problems that we have right now. I think once you see something that is working, even other political parties will acknowledge that this is working and we want to be part of the success story.
And some persons have said that he must hit the ground running.
Well, I think that he has to do. But we cannot also conclude or comment on that without also drawing the attention of the judiciary. You know, still there are gray areas that needed to be addressed. So that is why those to be constituted for tribunal job must also do that well, because if you must succeed as a president, the judiciary has to be restructured because the criminal justice administration is faulty. So these tribunals for both the House of Reps, Senate, and I will give you an example of Niger South. The section 26 and 53 of Electoral Act as amended 2022 stipulated that no winner shall be declared between two parties with highest votes, margin of lead, if it is below the council votes. In Niger South, in most of the local government that makes Niger South Senatorial District, that declaration has been made against the provision of the Electoral Act, Section 26 and 53. So these are areas, because when we are also, like my good brother said here, when we are talking about true reconciliation, there are certain gray areas we also need to address. Even the presidential, senatorial, and what have you to the judiciary under the Chief Justice of Nigeria must appoint only credible and competent judges so that at the end of the day, some of the abnormalities can be corrected.
Yes, I believe that very soon the tribunal will be
That is our prayer.
so
That is the best way to set the ground running. Because these are other issues that will push other candidates to come in for true national reconciliation.
Yeah, Kende, this time around we're seeing a different kind of National Assembly. We're seeing a National Assembly that is not going to be dominated by just two parties. We're seeing Labour Party got lots of people there, APC, PDP, YPP, NNPP, and all of that. To what extent do you think this divergence is going to impact his government?
First and foremost, we'll have a very robust debate in the National Assembly. That's what I'm foreseeing. I'm foreseeing the fact that there are a lot of people that will go in, you understand, not supporting the ideologies of the two big parties, but coming in with their own ideologies. Now, the danger, of course, is that as soon as the National Assembly settles down.
Exactly, I was going to say that is assuming they remain in those parties that brought them in.
They will start wooing them.
Exactly, you know.
So that is the challenge. But it depends on, in the first few months, the kind of direction the National Assembly wants to take too. I do not think that the National Assembly that is coming in will be something like a rubber stamp. I think there will be robust debates in that National Assembly, and things will not, many of the laws passed will not just come in automatically. It will be subject to robust debate.
To what extent do you think that the outcome of this election will impact his performance?
Well, sometimes it happens this way, and I think because of the opposition and some disagreements from the coalition center and other areas, will make him to wanting to achieve more than expectation of people. Because it's just like when you are devastated and you have to take off again. Instead of taking off in arithmetical time, you prefer to take off in geometrical time in order to put your enemies to shame. So I think with the controversies that surrounded, especially you saw the act of Senator Dino Melaye Ihedioa and other people at the International Conference Center, even though we expressed and defined it as sweetness of democracy, because like I posted a lot of things on social media that nobody should take it as antagonism or what have you. That is the sweetness of democracy. I think it will push him to wanting to do what can impress the populace, especially the electorates that gave him their votes, from healthcare delivery, educational attainment, power, stability, security, because majorly now we are facing problem of insurgency and armed banditry, including the activities of unknown men in some southeastern states. So I believe he will also like to draw up the map and finding a way to restructuring the entire security architecture, because without security, you cannot achieve infrastructural facelift, you cannot achieve human capacity building. There is nothing as dividend of democracy you can deliver without security. So I think with this, the president-elect, when inaugurated, would want to impress Nigerians by first of all tackling some of the problems associated with security and other gray areas as inherited from his predecessor, President Muhammadu Buhari, who is still in the seat.
You know, Kende, apart from the issues that came up at the Collation Center and all of that, we saw a situation where the state of the sitting president, that state also has an APC governor losing to another party. Yeah. We saw the state of the chairman of the APC losing, we saw it's going to another party. So what I'm trying to say is that now he's coming in on the back of the APC, but how is that going to affect his presidency? Because we used to have a situation where once you are in power and the ruling party, during an election, it sweeps almost all the states. But now this is different. Do you think that what has happened now is going to affect the way he governs?
Not necessarily. He's governing not as an APC president.
No, what I'm trying to say is that now you know that it's not automatic just because you're ruling, you belong to the ruling party. You're
That's
going to,
where I was going.
Yeah.
He's governing as a Nigerian president. So there's going to be ways he's going to reach out, which is what all presidents do anyway. Even President Buhari faced his opposition in the early days of his, and he had to interface with the state governors. There are many organizations and institutions that have been set up to ensure that the president interfaces with state governors, interfaces with National Assembly. So that is probably what he will do. You might say it will not be easier, but you might find out that it's easier for him because first and foremost, the president-elect first and foremost has a network of connections across the country, a network of connections around the world. I dare say that that network is something that the vastness of, yes, President Buhari had that network too, but the vastness of the network that Bola Tinubu has, President Buhari didn't have it. So he's going to lean on the network that he already has, the relationships that he already has. Don't be surprised that all these people that contested with him are also part of his network of friends. Yes, they contested, but he can pick up the phone and call them anytime and say, "Oh, let's bury the hatchet."
He actually said in his speech, he said, "We're just opponents, we're not enemies."
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they have interfaced in various levels of Nigeria's history. And he has history going back before 1999. And that is why, you know, his emergence is, can I say, a reward for past labor? Because we know that he's one of the persons that funded NADECO before this democracy came in. You understand? So he's had that history and he's had that network. And I'm very, very sure that he will lean on that network to make things happen.
Before he was announced president, we saw a story about 2 days ago where they said the stocks were doing better just by the projection that he was going to be elected president. Do you think that apart from stocks, we may see some changes even before he's sworn in as president?
It's very possible. First and foremost, the stocks will do better because there was already a clear-cut direction of where the presidency was going. And, you know, sometimes even character, even reputation in the way he's a business person. So basically, the projection will be that as a business person, Nigeria's economy will do better under him. As a person that's all his life has built a career in business and economics.
All right. With that, we'll take a pause. We'll go for a very short break, and when we return, we'll continue with the discussions. Please stay. All right, welcome back. We are still talking the elections and then the collation of the results and the announcement of the president-elect. So, Mr. Dantata, across the country, we have agitations here and there. We have IPOB in the southeast. We have we had the group in the southwest, of course, and then now we have a president-elect. How do you think? Because the people in the southeast have an agitation, and to the point that they even want the country to be split. What do you think he can do to get them to buy into, to key into his agenda and to key into the Nigerian project?
Well, there is nothing dialogue and reach out cannot do. At this point in time, what he needs to do is to extend olive branch to some of these aggrieved groups by, in a way, inviting them to see the reason why they should listen to him. For them to also accept the fact that if the reasons are based on lopsidedness in opinion, because to the best of our knowledge, some of the agitations were born out of the inability of the administration in place to give them certain things they want, even though most of the federal character principles sometimes they, clearly states that they are satisfying the entire country. But when you look at some of the appointments, you can see, of course, it's far from it. If you look at the constitution, for example, of the service chiefs, heads of security agencies and also of others, it is from the northern part where we come from. So I think the president-elect, as a neutral person now, who is about to take the mantle of leadership, can avail himself of this opportunity, since there is a committee himself is going to set up. Forget about the transition committee headed by the SGF, that is at the part of the incumbent president, who will be handing over in May or so. So I think the president-elect too can constitute his own committee. I think he has some intellectuals that know security, because I have cited a former Chief of Army Staff under Yaradua, Lieutenant General Abdurrahman Dambazau, who is a non-criminologist too, to be in his team, where they even had dinner and other things together. So, and he was also former Minister of Interior. It was under Abdurrahman Dambazau as Minister of Interior that solving of civil disobedience and civil unrest were, attached to Ministry of Interior, because first in history, under him, he moved to Taraba, where there were communal clashes and other things. So personalities like that can aid his security committee to reach out to some of these aggrieved groups. But relating to bandits and insurgents, no, because my own philosophy and idea is, once you have killed or made somebody, a child, an orphan, a wife, a widow, there is no point reconciling with you. Theirs can be solved through onslaught, military onslaught. Like the unknown gunmen, the IPOB differs from unknown gunmen, because severally the IPOB have disowned the unknown gunmen. There are some criminal elements who are going under the banner of IPOB to perpetrate Illinois Act and also for that, which IPOB itself as a body have disclaimed and also other things. So the authentic IPOB that are intellectuals, that have genuine agitation for the defense of their region, which is the Southeast, can be brought to the round table to hear from them what is it that you want. If it is not above the capacity of the president-elect, then it can be, once you are president-elect, you are not alone. You are to defend the entire country. You are to do things that will satisfy both the 6 geopolitical zones. Okay. Therefore, satisfying one above the other is also injustice.
All right, yes, Mr. Dantata, you said that bringing everybody to the table, but everybody needs to be ready to come to that table before you can actually achieve anything. So, Kehinde, do you think that all parts of the country will want to come to the table to work with President-elect?
Yeah, I think basically, yes. I think he's laid out, Mr. Dantata has laid out basically the structure of how these engagements will go. Those that have the insurgents, the bandits, those that have killed on a large scale, that don't have any ideology behind their killings, but just are there to loot and make money out of it. Those you can't negotiate with, and they won't even come to the negotiation table. But the IPOB, the Oodua Republic people are agitating based on perceived marginalization. And the truth about it is that all parts of the country, if you go to any part of the country, there is no part of the country, there is no geopolitical zone that you don't have people agitating for government being more inclusive. But if you can understand that the agitation in the Southeast has been there for some time now. It's even predated that in the Southwest. So I think as it is now, there must be a priority to bring everybody to the table. But he still has 6 months before he steps into...
no, it's not up to 6 months.
Okay,
we're in March today. Today is March.
Okay,
so
3 months.
April, May. It's less than.
Yeah. So he still has like 3 months.
May 29th.
2.5 months to go around in his capacity as a private citizen and build those relationships and try and do those negotiations before he steps in as the president-elect. I think maybe as the president proper when he's sworn in. So he has that time to establish the informal structures. And then when he becomes president, now start building on what they have agreed and negotiated.
All right, away from the president-elect now, we saw something that looked like a revolution in this particular election. We saw big wigs losing their seats. Are we done with the old order, Mr. Dantata?
Well, somehow I think they are phasing out. And that is what you call popular representation and popular electoral victory. You see, if you watch, it was not issue of only one state. We know of a sitting governor who lost. We know of a governor's son who lost, and host of others. That is to tell you that multiple party practice also helps. Look at Kwankwaso's party. Even though you know NNPP has been existing, it's only the individual attachment of Kwankwaso that made the party to be that known and popular. Nobody ever expected that in this senatorial and House of Representative election that NNPP was going to gather momentum and get victory as it is. So the issue is telling you that our pattern of mentality, of practice of democracy is changing, where people now go for individual other than party, because most of these losses were not attached to parties, but were attached to there were some natural people that the electorates were fed up and tired of, and that played out by voting them out. So that is to tell you 2027 is going to be even more than this. So it's a good thing and a very big kudos and bravo to our electorates for standing against the impunity of certain people they perceived became like teen gods that never delivered democracy dividend. Because if they had done so, I don't think by any ramification they would have been voted out.
All right, Kehinde, he talked about the fact that Nigerians had rejected these people, and that is why they were not voted in. But then we have had years where Nigerians rejected these people and these people won. What happened this time?
This time around, people are more vigilant about their votes. People are more interested. It's one thing for you to say, this is what we want to do. You understand? And you make all the noise before the election. Then on election day, you are sitting at home and you're not, or you are playing football in the fields. People went to the polling units this time around. And
maybe, do you think the beavers contributed? Because people also, in the past, we had instances where they also went to the polling unit, but the results sometimes were not the true reflection
yes,
of the people.
The beavers had a big impact on ensuring the credibility of these elections. And you've had, if you had looked at the proceedings of the National Collation Center, you had areas in which people that bypassed the beavers, those votes were nullified. So there's this, the integrity of the votes was preserved this time around. And no matter what anybody might say about it, it's there for everybody to see. The evidence is there that in states you had upsets. In states, new people have come in. The order of replacement of old politicians has been allowed to take place. And this is coming about 4 years after overdue. It's about 4 years overdue. Because replacement of political, what you call it, it's something that comes every 10 years. You understand? And the set that came in 1999 have actually outlived their time span. There's a time for the younger.
Well, there's no time span in the National Assembly. You can stay there.
Yes, 20 years. But now you see that if not in, you see that there are some lawmakers that have lost their seats.
Yes, they've been there since 1999. They are losing out to newcomers,
yes,
unknown people, as it were.
Their time span has expired. It's time for them to go home and be elder statesmen.
Mr. Dantata, do you think that because some observers have said that there was no cases of vote buying were very, very minimal. Do you think that the lack of money to buy votes contributed to this outcome?
Well, that I think I would disagree, because from some rural areas, it was alleged that there were POS machines where people were lured and money sent into their account. Mind you, cash was very scarce due to the CBN cashless policy and host of others. So I just think, I think awareness made the vote what have you to be at the higher, because among the social media influencers and what have you, before the election proper, you saw the kind of awareness going on, don't sell your vote, don't do this and that. Even at that, like I told you, it happened in some rural areas, and there were even allegations that beavers were not used in certain places, and even the restriction to time of voting were not adhered to that. Even voting had to be extended to the next day, which was Sunday, because where I observed was a police settlement down Kogi filling station. Vote was counted at about 3:30 a.m., which ought not to be. So if we are to bring this to play, we'll be able to what have you. But the issues are, we thank God, at least certain people like my colleague here said, that had spent more than expected years have been shown out. They've done even what they call passing out parade. You know, passing out parade in the military is when you pass out from NDA or the depot or police academy or so. But in politics now, their own passing out parade is for them to step aside till another period.
All right, Kehinde, do you also agree that we've gone past the era of vote buying and vote selling?
Yeah, it has evolved. It has evolved. So, you know, the politicians are smarter. So they've run ahead of the system. I wouldn't rule out vote buying, but I would say the incidences of vote buying were not glaring to see. Maybe had reduced somewhat because of this cashless policy. But to say that there was no vote buying would be a bit naive, because there are other ways in which the politicians will move their funds to evade the authorities. And I think that is what they did this time around.
All right. Mr. Dantata, one group of people that they always malign or attack during elections the security personnel. But this time around, we see people giving them kudos, we see observers giving them kudos, we even see the voters giving them kudos. What changed?
I think that was what you call display of professionalism. Before the election days, according to the headship of the various security agencies, you know, once issues come to providing security during elections, it knows no military, it knows no police, it knows no paramilitary, because I practically observed where they were being prepared. Just the way the police brought out their specialized courts, so also immigration, custom, including even VIO and road safety. That is for you to know that they took this election to be very serious, including the Army, Navy, Air Force, Civil Defense, and even National Drug Law Enforcement agencies. Like the Collation Center, 4 days before the collation, the security agencies were already there, including the Department of State Services. And what they did was to condone most of the roads that could be porous, that could be penetrated by some unscrupulous element. You know, once you are making this strategy, you also have to think about, because you know there were threats from bandits that there weren't going to be election or coalition and also others. The securities were on top of the situation. So also the nook and crannies of this country. The officers from the police outposts, divisional headquarters, area command, state command, and also the equivalent of their cantonments in the Land Army, Navy, Air Force, immigration, all the agility and gallantry were displayed. Then also their intelligence officers were spread across, because I of course saw intelligence officers from Force CID, Department of State Services, military intelligence, including even Defense Intelligence Agency and their counterparts in NIA, and also intelligence arms of other of the uniform agencies. So, and the secret liaison as well as meetings also had, because there were situations where other security agencies went even to the IG to meet. Then also those at the zonal level, AIGs, ACGs, and others like brigadier generals, GOCs, air officer commandants, flag officer commandants, and even controller of states went to their counterparts in states and zonal offices to also meet in order to further add to how the security can be provided for a smooth, fair, and successful election, which happened. Then also, their rules of engagement were adhered to. We never saw brutality as it used to be. You've seen soldier during election beating somebody, or police or DSS and others. All these things were at minimal level because they adhered to what they call rules of engagement, which according to what lecture their higher echelons gave them, where if you violated this, you could face orderly room trial or court-martial or other disciplinary, actions by other agencies.
All right, Kehinde, because time is running out, I'd like you to just talk very briefly the impact of this just concluded election on the image of Nigeria. I mean, we have African countries now that are having coups, and this is the 7th time Nigerians are going to the polls and electing a president since the return of democracy in 1999.
Yeah, I think the image of Nigeria is up there, despite the agitations, despite the attempt to throw mud on the credibility of the whole process. I think everybody agrees that this was a well-conducted election. Everybody agrees that this was a close race, and that hitherto outsiders entered the race and were able to make gains, which shows that the process was to a large extent free and fair. And so, if that has been established, definitely the image of Nigeria on the international scene has gone up a notch. And there is respect that, yes, this country was able to conduct elections in its vast space successfully.
Okay, your final thought.
Well, there were divergent views because like the American International Republican Institute, as well as National Democratic Institute, as well as former Zambian President Joyce Banda, I think their own submissions were that INEC did not do what it was expected to do because most of the logistics and electoral materials did not get to polling units in time. They were not holding the president responsible but INEC. So I think in the governorship and state House of Assembly election, INEC need to do more than much effort than this presidential and senatorial House of Representative elections. All
right, sadly we'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, a political analyst, security and political analyst, Mr. Mahmood Dantata, for joining us this morning. Well, our own in-house analyst, Kehinde Amodu, thank you also for joining us this morning. All right, Nigerians, it's a wrap on Nigeria Decides 2022. Of course, Nigeria Decides will return on March 11th for the governorship elections. But stay with us. At 3 p.m., the president-elect will be at INEC office to pick his certificate of return, and Trust TV will be bringing that to you live. For now, we'll say goodbye for now and stay tuned. More programs will continue. My name is Stella Iyaji.